Welcome to Conversations. I'm Muqtadar Khan, your host, and today I want to reflect on what are the factors that are going to shape the future of the Middle East, the regional order, and overall how the US strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities are going to shape and reshape the global order even. Is it going to have that much of an impact, or will it just alter the balance of power in the Middle East and reassert Israeli hegemony over the Middle East and undermine any resistance of any kind to Israel and its expansion in the Middle East? And that is the question that I really want to address. But in order to answer that broad question, there are seven issues, I think, which are right now agitating the geopolitics of the Middle East and might determine what really happens in the near term and long term future of the Middle East and the global order. So I'm going to discuss essentially 7 points that I think are key to understanding how the region is going to develop now that the United States has entered the war against Iran. So, but before I do that, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, press the bell icon, and share this video with your socio-political network. And don't forget to join the channel and become a member so that it can be supported through your membership. The first issue that we really need to get a grasp of is, was Iran's nuclear capability fully neutralized? Yes, Operation Hammer, the Midnight Hammer. So the first question that really needs to be answered is, was Iran's nuclear capability fully neutralized by the US attack? The US used B-2 bombers, dropped 14 essentially bunker buster bombs, 12 on Fordo and 2 on Natanz. Have these massive ordinances achieved their goal of obliterating Iran's nuclear facilities? There are serious questions about it, and there were serious questions even before the operation whether that the US had the capacity to really fully destroy, especially Fordo, which is more than 200 feet below the surface in the mountains, and the capacity of these bunker buster bombs were only about 60 meters, which is roughly around 200 feet. So the question remains, we have not received what we call as battle damage assessment reports. And so unless there is some kind of an inspection, the world is not really going to fully know what this attack really achieved. But given the sheer, shall we say, force of the bombs that were dropped, especially on Fordo, we are looking at 12 bombs of 30,000 pounds. It is safe to assume that some damage definitely has occurred, and which means that have pushed back Iran's nuclear program by perhaps several years. Especially the enrichment capacity of Iran must have been significantly diminished. So that question remains the key. For example, if there was very little damage and if Iran can restore its capacity for enriching uranium very quickly, then it might move from 60% to 90% within weeks and then become a nuclear power state. It is suggesting that it might withdraw from NPT. It has stopped cooperating with IAEA. So there is this possibility that if the damage is not significant, then Iran can quickly restore those facilities and continue with its nuclear program. And now it has an incentive to become a nuclear power. Remember, George Bush identified three states as the axis of evil: Iran, Iraq, and North Korea. And they were seen as threats with weapons of mass destruction. Iran and Iraq have both been attacked, and North Korea has never been attacked. And the difference is that North Korea has nuclear weapons. Iran and Iraq did not possess any nuclear weapons, and they were attacked by nuclear powers. So if this is a lesson that Iran is going to draw from this, then you can expect that Iran will probably rush towards acquiring nuclear weapons in an effort to try and deter Iran, the future attacks by US and Israel. The second question that I think is critical to that will shape what happens in the Middle East in the near and long-term future is, what becomes of Iran's enriched uranium stockpiles? Iran has about 9,000 kilograms of enriched uranium, of which about 408 kilos are at 60%. And apparently, that the density of this enriched uranium is so high that 400 kilos of uranium can be actually packed into a medium-sized backpack. Can you imagine that? Just this much? 400 kilos of enriched uranium, which from which you can potentially make 8 to 10 nuclear weapons, 8 to 10 atom bombs in just this much space. And so, what is going to happen to this uranium stockpiles? Have they been destroyed, or because the entrances to the tunnels have been kind of collapsed because of the bombing? Is that uranium out of Iran's reach? It is quite possible that Iran may have split it into, say, one bomb pile, like 40 kilos, and distributed them and hidden them in various spots all over the world. And given the small size, I mean, it could be hidden in any house, in any bank's locker. So that question is going to be very critical as to what has happened with the uranium stockpiles, because it still can be used to develop a nuclear program. It won't help Iran develop an energy program, but it can definitely help Iran build a small stockpile of nuclear weapons if the entire capacity to enrich has not been damaged. The third issue that I think is critical is how will Iran respond? Will it attack the United States? There are two questions. Will Iran retaliate against US assets, US bases, US soldiers which are there in the region? You can see from this graphic that I'm sharing that the US has so many bases all around Iran, and which are within range of Iran's short range rockets. Iran has hypersonic missiles. It could use them against US bases and endanger the lives of American soldiers who are serving there. And that will drag the US into a war, a never ending war, which the US does not want at this moment. And there is a lot of resistance in Donald Trump's base against another never ending Middle Eastern war. And especially since this is not in the interest of the US, this would be a war that America would be fighting purely because Netanyahu dragged the US into this war by attacking Iran against the wishes of Donald Trump. So that's the first question. Will Iran attack US assets or US allies? And the second question is, will Tehran attempt to block the Strait of Hormuz, through which about 25% of all seaborne oil supplies and natural gas pass through, and nearly 20% of actual energy, global energy supplies goes through Strait of Hormuz. And if Iran were to block that, it will definitely trigger a global recession. It may not hurt the US economy as much, but lots of economies in the region will be hurt, including US allies who buy this energy and those who sell this energy. India could be hurt because, if nothing, the shortage of Gulf energy sources would increase the cost of supplies from further apart. Like if India was buying Russian oil or from the US, then it'll be a longer period for that energy to come. It would be more expensive. And because of the shortage of supply, the cost will go. The assumption is that the price of gas would go above $100 a barrel. So that will definitely hurt and undermine the development of many global south countries. It could put many countries into recession. So that is the second question. Will Iran do this? But it will also hurt Iran because Iran's own oil that goes to China particularly goes through Strait of Hormuz. So it'll be like a suicide mission for China, for Iranian economy. And it will also hurt China. And the question also remains that since China buys so much of its oil from Iran, will China start now looking at alternative sources? So if they find an alternative source, will they ever come back to buy Iranian oil, which has the risk of secondary sanctions attached to them? So this is a serious question for Iran. Will Iran try to block the Strait of Hormuz? The fourth question, which is also really the key question, is will Iran seek to pursue nuclear weapons? Will Iran withdraw from the NPT? Iran played by the book. Iran became a member of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, signed, unlike Israel, it signed the treaty And unlike Israel, Iran has allowed itself to one of the most severest and intrusive regime of IAEA and others who have been scrutinizing its nuclear program. Its nuclear program has been under the lens of the global society. The world has been watching its nuclear program, and Iran has allowed that by being a member of the Non-Proliferation Treaty in order to get the right to a peaceful nuclear program. So, will Iran withdraw from NPT and then genuinely pursue a nuclear weapon? That is the critical question. And if it does, then what? If Iran does manage to acquire a stockpile of 8 to 10 uh, nuclear bombs, it does have a ballistic missile capability. The question remains, how long will it take for it to be able to miniaturize these bombs and be able to install them on its missiles? Some people estimate that will take about 18 months to 2 years. But will Iran become a nuclear power? That is an important question. And has the United States pushed Iran in that direction? That the answer to that question will once again determine the balance of power in the Middle East and global balance of power. With another nuclear power in the Middle East, you can bet that it will trigger an arms race. Saudi Arabia has already made it very clear that if Iran becomes a nuclear power, Saudi Arabia will pursue it too. And I think United Arab Emirates and Egypt will not lag behind. So you could end up in the next 10 years with 4 nuclear powers in just the Middle East. And what does that do to Israel's deterrence and its continued expansion of its borders, basically by acquiring more and more land in the West Bank and Gaza? So those are some really big questions that I don't really have answers to, but I do want us to reflect on the criticality of this question. Will Iran go nuclear? My fifth question is, will Israel escalate regional tensions further by continuing to attack Iran? Donald Trump claims that we have obliterated Iran's capabilities with towards enrichment. So Iran is not really a threat now because it doesn't have a nuclear program. Or will Israel say, no, it does have some supplies left and we want that enriched? And so the same logic will pursue, and Israel will continue to be aggressive, violating international law, international norms, and using the threat of Iran's enriched uranium as a justification for all its rogue behavior in the region, as it has done for the last 30, 40 years. And then also continue to pressure the United States to support it with arms and weapons and money, billions of dollars of military aid, so on and so forth, because Iran has a backpack full of enriched uranium at 60%. So that is the question. Or will Iran say, okay, we have achieved this goal, and Israel will say, we have achieved this goal, we have destroyed Iran's capabilities entirely, and so agree to a ceasefire. There is a school of thought in both the United States as well as in Israel, which says, well, we have weakened Iran significantly. We have destroyed its proxies. Now we have destroyed its own defensive capabilities. Iran can't defend itself. So let's go forward and uh, destroy the regime itself and basically replace the current Iranian regime with a regime that is much more compliant to US, especially to Israeli interests. So basically install a government in Iran which will work towards advancing Israeli interests indefinitely. Is that what Israel going to pursue? Many experts feel that precipitating a regime change is not going to be easy. It could drag the United States into a war. You'll have to put Bush on the ground. Just endlessly bombing Iran is not going to change the government. In fact, it is quite possible that the public is going to rally behind the regime and the regime will become stronger. The country might become militarily weak, but the regime might become much more stronger in Iran itself because of this excessive, brutal, inhuman bombing of a helpless nation. Given the fact that its proxies have been destroyed, its defense capabilities have been destroyed, further bombing of Iran would essentially send a signal to the public of Iran that that these countries are not friendly to the people of Iran. My sixth question is, what does all of this mean for U.S. foreign policy under Donald Trump? Donald Trump promised to become a peacemaker. He promised to end the Russia-Ukraine war within 24 hours. He promised to solve the problem of Gaza by bringing about ceasefire. He promised to make sure that there are no new endless wars in the Middle East. He has failed on all those three counts. Russia and Ukraine are still at it. The killing in Gaza, the genocide in Gaza continues endlessly with the help of the US, legal support, US weapons, US money is still flowing towards Israel. And Israel, even while fighting with Iran, is also killing civilians in Gaza. Uh, Donald Trump has completely failed when it comes to Gaza. He made big pronouncement, hasn't realized even 1% of those big, tall claims. The same in Ukraine, the same in Gaza. And he had also promised that he would not enter another Middle East war. Is America first foreign policy now replaced with Israel first, or is that phrase itself meaningless? Donald Trump says, I invented the word America first. So whatever I say is America first. No, that's not clear. You just flagged it to us. By the way, America first is a concept which was used in the 1920s also. So there's nothing new about the idea. So the question is Donald Trump departed from his campaign promises of not pursuing a major war in the Middle East? To be fair to him, he did on many occasions say that he wants an Iran that is without nuclear capabilities. He does not want to see a nuclear Iran, but he never said that he would do that through threats. He would do that through negotiations, and he himself abandoned the negotiations to such a point that everybody wonders, can America be trusted anymore? Can you negotiate with Donald Trump and trust that he will keep his promises? That is a question that the Iranians must be asking. Okay, so if we go back to the table and Donald Trump says today uh, XYZ, will he completely do the opposite tomorrow? That is a question about American foreign policy, about American credibility, about American priorities. If Trump cannot stick to his own stated agenda, his own stated priorities, then how does the world interact with the United States? And finally, the external support. Countries like Russia and China, who are members of BRICS and SCO along with Iran, will they support Iran? There's a lot of rhetorical and diplomatic support that Iran is receiving from both Russia and China. Both have very strongly condemned the US and have initiated a call in the UN Security Council to bring about ceasefire. But will Russia and China provide material support to Iran, which will allow Iran to continue to fight uh, against Israel? And if it chooses, will it also be getting support from Russia and China if it chooses to attack America? That is also a critical question because Iran's economy has suffered under the sanctions that have been in place for decades. It's not exactly a thriving economy. It suffers from lots of defects, even though the people are extremely creative and progressive and scientific, and they have developed a ballistic program that is really magnificent, to say the least. It was able to penetrate Israel's heavily funded and heavily supported by U.S. Defense, multi-layered defense system, the Iron Dome, etc. There are like 4 or 5 layers there. So the question remains is, will Russia and China provide some kind of substantial support to Iran, which will make Iran continue this fight, or will they encourage Iran to go to the table and negotiate with Donald Trump and give up its nuclear enrichment program in exchange for sanctions relief? That is another question. So these are the 7 questions that I think will determine the future of the geopolitics in the Middle East, the balance of power in the Middle East, and also the role that the United States will play in that region. And finally, ultimately, the balance of power worldwide and global order. So I hope you found this conversation thought-provoking. So please subscribe to the channel, like this video, press the bell icon, and do share it with your socio-political network. Until next time, I'm your host, Muqtadar Khan. Take care.